The example we have just seen does not return any value, so this function does not return a value. You see we don't have a return instruction here. This is also called the procedure. It does something with the data, but again it does not produce a value. We call it this way. As you see, we don't assign the function to anything. It's like calling a print instruction. It does something, that's it. But we can change this function to actually include a return statement, in which case it will produce a value that can be used in the main program that's calling the function. Here's an example. So I have recoded the body of the functional table so that it generates a list with a multiplication table. This is done with a list comprehension, but you could easily do that with a for loop, and actually I invite you to try it. You can just generate one product at a time with a for loop and then append it to a list until you have the complete multiplication table. So once we have this list with a multiplication table, we return the list to the main program, and the main program can assign it to a variable. So this variable gets the value of the multiplication table. Let me try and show you by commenting out all these lines below. I hope, by the way, that you try these little modifications of this code on your own, because that's a very good way to learn. So you see, if you try to print out this variable, you will see that it actually contains the list that has been returned. Now we can actually uncomment the rest of this code. And here we go. So as you see, we're not obliged to actually assign the value of the function to a variable. We can, for instance, pass it to another function. In this case, we're passing it to the print function. But of course, you often want to assign the value of the function to a variable so that you can use it in several places in the code that follows. In the end, this is very, very similar to what we've seen here at the top. So this is also a function that produces a value, and so we assign it to a variable. There are two final things worth noting here. The first one is that this second definition of the functional table has overwritten the first definition here. This is in generally not a useful thing to do. So logically, if you have a function in your code, it's because you want to use it, so you don't want to overwrite it with something else. The only exception is with inheritance in object-oriented programming, but we will see that later. And therefore, normally you want to have functions that have different names from each other. And the second thing to note is, as you will have tried out, the function of the string, the comment string that you put over here, this string actually gets printed when you ask for help on the function. And it's actually a good idea to write that, especially when you write your function as part of a module of functions that, as we will see in the next notebook, are not immediately included with your main program but are written in a separate file, where in that case you may just not remember directly what the function does, and then it's useful to be able to bring up the function of the function, so to say, with the help command.